So here's a question for you. We now know who can vote. Any male or female citizen above the age of 18 in the United States. We know the story of how that that franchise got expanded. I ask you, who should vote? I want you to think about it and offer a thoughtful opinion in the comments section. This question matters because right now there are people trying to say felons should be able to vote in all 50 states. The question of whether people who are developmentally disabled or mentally retarded has been answered. They are allowed to vote. So somebody who doesn't even understand what the word vote means can be brought into a polling place and be guided to vote by somebody who's a one-to-one worker with them. And I used to work in that industry. I saw people trying to do that. I didn't let it happen on my watch. If somebody wanted to vote, they could. But the idea of political operatives coming into group homes and getting people to vote was just horrific to me, and I wouldn't take part in it. But they're legally allowed to vote. Who should be allowed to vote? The Roman Republic, again, which is our role model, had an idea about this. As you'll learn in ancient history next year, hopefully if you're going to be staying at the Charter Academy, you will learn that service equals citizenship. The Roman Republic required that all male citizens serve in the legions, that your military service earned you the right to vote. In fact, Roman senators were called conscript fathers, which means draftee fathers, which means you all served in the military and you're all combat veterans, or veterans at least of serving in the legions. Why did the Romans care about this? Well, they took the opinion that anyone who isn't willing to risk their life for their country really doesn't have much of a place deciding its future. This idea was explored in the science fiction novel Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein, which was made into a movie which has very little to do with the book. But the idea is that the Romans insisted that a person put their one and only life on the line for their country as a way of earning the right to help determine and shape its future. We didn't do that. We did not decide to make the franchise based on that. The closest we came to that were the various property restrictions that existed early in the history of the American Republic. Who do you think should vote, and why? Should it be, as we have now, any American citizen who is 18 years or older? Should felons have the right to vote after they've served their time? Should felons have the right to vote in prison? Should people who are mentally challenged have the right to vote? Should the vote be restricted to veterans? Should the vote be restricted to people with property? Should people who are on federal assistance, welfare, food stamps, that sort of thing, should they have a right to vote? Now this is playing with fire. But as Americans, you owe it to yourself to think about this question at least once. Should somebody who is receiving government assistance, which is advocated by one political party, be allowed to vote when their livelihood, their sustenance, their shelter and food are provided by federal assistance that's advocated by one political party? In other words, will people vote for the folk who promise them the most welfare? Is there an inherent conflict of interest in this? Now, if you think there is, or if you think there isn't, I want you to think about it. Is there any other restriction that should be placed on voting, or is there any other removal of a restriction that currently exists on voting? Some people would argue that a resident of Santa Ana, California, who has lived in the United States for most of their life, even though their parents or they came here illegally from another country, could be Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, doesn't matter. Could be China, doesn't matter. If you spend most of your life in Santa Ana, California, if you are living there, if your kids or if you are going to school there in some way, shape, or form, if you depend upon the city services of Santa Ana, California, should you have a right as a resident, even though you're not a citizen, to vote? Should children have the right to vote, and if so, at what age? So, normally I expect your comments to be thoughtful and fairly brief. In the case of this comment, though, I would like something that's a couple of paragraphs long, where you really ask yourself one of these questions and then answer it and provide reasons and provide one or two examples of what things might be like or what things are like from the real world or things that you would imagine. So you're going to have a thesis, which is your statement about voting. You're going to have some reasons for believing your thesis, which are just logical or statements of philosophy or belief or faith. And then you will talk about examples of your ideas in practice or examples of ideas that you're against, that you want to change. Thank you for your attention on this subset on who gets to vote in the United States. We will then continue with the American presidency.